One of the things we all agreed on in the book, might seem funny to you watching these videos, that we did have some tension around some of the chapters, but I think that we all can agree that the new joiner experience or the onboarding experience for new individuals into the organization is just so important, and it can either set somebody up for a wonderful, more wholehearted integration, or it can just leave people feeling like they're floundering and that maybe they've even made a mistake in joining the organization. So Travis, I'm curious, why is it so important? And especially and particularly in organizations that lead together, are self-managing, or in these days, in this day and age, potentially distributed or decentralized.
Right. And there's so much change that happens when somebody comes into an organization, right? They've got so many things to learn, new processes, new ways of doing things. How are they going to contribute? What skills are valued? And that happens regardless of what organization somebody's coming into. If you want to layer on top of that a new way of working, you can see that so often talked about when somebody goes from a large company to a startup. That's a new paradigm on way of working. Or when somebody goes into a distributed team where they've always used to be in the office, that's a new way of trying to interact with peers and colleagues to gather information. If you add in that, like, hey, you're responsible for what your biggest priorities are, and nobody's going to tell you this, and nobody's necessarily going to hold your feet to the fire if you're getting that done instead of that, and that's on you. That can become both an incredible opportunity and an incredible challenge. And without a little bit of guardrails early on to help people get their footing and get headed in the right direction, it's really easy to spin in circles. And so it's so easy to forget how unnerving it is to be given that much leniency, especially early in your time in your organization. You don't necessarily trust that these people are for real in what they're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. And when that scaffolding's not present, uh, there can be lots of misses, Brent. And I know that you've seen some of these. Can you tell us a little bit about why it's so important, at least in this case, around onboarding, to have the process pretty clearly defined or scaffolded?
Mhm. I think the number one miss is forgetting about it. I think that every organization and every person that's involved in an organization really wants anybody joining the team to have a great experience. And at the time that we're choosing to onboard somebody is probably a time that we're already short on team members, and we're all scrambling to try and keep things moving forward. So onboarding just falls to the bottom of the list. And that can be everything from remembering to order equipment if it's required, or set up things, access to things that need to be set up. But then after, most teams do a relatively reasonably good job on day one. Somebody's coming in, we'll make sure that we're here, we introduce them to some people and what have you. And then day two comes, and onboarding by day two or day three really starts to slip away. And so I think a good onboarding process continues for up to 3 months, and it is it falls off over time. The intensity of it decreases over time, but it does need to be thought from that full perspective. And so I think that that's one part. The second part, I would say, is being really purposeful in what the roles are. Because in a lead together organization, if a role isn't defined, then work doesn't get done. In a traditional organization, managers often become the fill-in of the gaps. Oh, nobody's figured out onboarding, I guess that's up to me. But in a lead together organization, because we don't have managers, we do rely on other roles in the organization to step in. So in the onboarding processes that I help my clients put together, we always make sure that there's a mentor role. We make sure that there's a social connector role. And we make sure that there's a role in the organization that deals with the more tactical, technical aspects of onboarding, sometimes called an onboarding leader, onboarding coordinator. So in every onboarding, there should be at least 3 different roles that have very clearly defined elements to them, so that people know, both the person filling the role and the person being the recipient of the benefits of the role, that what that role is there to fill and to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm curious about in how a recruitment approach plays into the onboarding process. And I'm thinking specifically in some cultures and some organizations in some countries, there's this concept of the 3-month kind of trial period, at the end of which either party can say, no, this isn't working. I'm curious, Travis, what have you seen in terms of how recruitment approaches impact the onboarding process or policies around recruitment?
Right. Like, I think it's wonderful if you've got the time and both parties have the flexibility to try out something for an extended time, then you've got a wonderful chance to extend the recruiting process, figure out if this works, right? And you've got to be careful that companies don't take advantage of that possible power dynamic. It's become really common in Silicon Valley to give people work assignments and startups that are actually the real work that needs to be done. And you're like, oh, this is 4 hours. Well, some people spend 4 days or pull in all these extra resources. And so if you're asking somebody to jump on board, that's great if they're coming from an independent contractor position and they've got their clients and they can kind of slowly transition. And if they're making a bigger commitment, then how do you have that trial day or that trial experience? So I really love the way that Menlo Innovations thinks of this, which is a software consultancy, and they don't even look at resumes before they go to try and have an experience, because what they're trying to recruit for is people that work really well together, like approach problems with curiosity and can collaborate. And so they bring people in for a day-long session, and candidates work with each other. They work with people on the team, and they don't look at the resumes until after they're about to make the offer, which has given them an incredibly diverse team. Everything from elementary school teachers to physics majors to philosophers that end up becoming some of their best programmers. And it wouldn't have been able to be obvious from just looking at a piece of paper ahead of time. And so they kind of meld this recruiting and onboarding piece together.
Yeah, I love that, Travis. And so when somebody has joined, like, there are some top tips. Brent, I appreciated you really pointing out the relationship between onboarding and clear roles. One thing that I've seen that works well, that works well in organizations that are maybe do recruitment in batches, is inviting, like, if you're hiring 3 new people, invite them to join on the same day so that they have sort of a little onboarding pod that they can be in relationship with each other as they're navigating their onboarding process. What are some other top tips that you've seen, Brent?
It certainly is nice if you can have more than one person joining, because you also then get the energy of the team around them. More people joining, more energy from the team. I think some other ways that I've seen organizations bring people in, especially when they can't do that, the opportunity isn't there. Leveraging videos. So there is a lot of content in the organization that can be captured in video format. And so, for example, the origin story, capturing the origin story and being able to share that. Another is creating just simple checklists. It seems like such a basic step, but it is so helpful for different roles, including the person that's joining, to have some checklists that they can work through to know that, yep, we've covered off all of the necessary things. And by starting a checklist, and then including also a retrospective at the end of each onboarding process, which is just an opportunity for all of the people that were involved in the process to sit down together and say, hey, what worked well? What could we do better next time? And then incorporating that into the checklists that already exist. So those checklists become living documents that are continually improving and improving over time.
Yeah, I really love that. And I've seen it done well in Trello. So instead of just a checklist, doing it in Trello cards. And then when you've moved everything over to the done category, then it triggers the retrospective. I love that.